you
Yeah.
know?
And where do you all live?
I live in Glastonbury.
Oh, so it's a drive.
Yeah, it was fine this morning.
Good, good.
Wallingford, but I have a son who lives in Norwalk, so I stayed there last
Good.
night.
You crashed.
Yeah, saw
Crashed
the
with him?
grandkids. and
Good. Makes it better.
You live here in Norwalk?
I live in Westport.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
not
so
bad.
I'm, 10 minutes. It's great. It's, I get in at 3:30, so there's really no traffic at my hour.
3:30.
Joe, can we have a mic check from you? Just
7 years ago, I was born, actually.
thank you.
Is that good enough?
And Bob,
It sure seems that way.
good. So Joe. Welcome back. I'm Amelie Wilson. Education reform has been all the talk in Hartford this legislative session. In the meantime, 3 state education organizations have joined forces. They've launched a campaign. It's called What Will Our Children Lose? Bob Rader and Joe Cirasuolo are here today. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
So first of all, we'll start with you, Bob.
Sure.
What is your role in the organization?
I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education.
And what? Okay, sorry. We're gonna start over again.
Okay.
There was a book and my head popped out, so I think we're gonna start over. Okay, good.
Just remember what you said, Bob.
Yeah.
Your
whatever
solo,
It's
sorry.
brilliant. I just can't
No,
remember what it
no
was.
problem. I thought it looked funny. I was like, all of a sudden, it was my face, and a book went. Psh. So, good. We'll start over. We only start over if I mess up.
Okay, so we
basically.
screw up,
You
then we
guys,
go
I'm
over.
sorry.
We're
We'll let
stuck.
you. We'll let you sing.
Pushing this the wrong way. Is this straight this time?
Welcome back to the Education Notebook. I'm Amelie Wilson. This weekend, what Connecticut teachers are up against with slashed budgets, question about tenure. This legislative session has been anything but smooth. This is the start of the show. Sorry, guys. There, we need B. B as in boy. There. Welcome back. I'm Amelie Wilson. Education reform has been all the talk in Hartford this legislative session. In the meantime, 3 state organizations have joined forces. They've launched a campaign. It's called What Will Our Children Lose? Bob Rader is here along with Joe Cirasuolo. Thank you so much for coming.
Nice to be here.
Our pleasure.
So you felt a need to join forces. Tell us which organizations are involved, Bob.
Well, it's the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, it's the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, and the Connecticut Association of School Business Officials.
Okay. Joe, what is your goal?
Our goal is to make sure that the state level of funding is what it needs to be, so we don't have a continuation of what we had the last 2 or 3 years, which is reduction in funding or level funding, which means less money at this local level, has resulted in program curtailment, program reductions, increases in staff and class sizes, all of those things. So we're really advocating for an adequate level of funding at the state level.
Okay, so what's the funding looking like this year? How are things?
Not great, and we're worried about next year as well. We appreciate the governor giving us $50 million more in the general state aid grant that all school districts receive some, which is better than flat funding, which we had for the 3 years before. But our concerns are that there are other things coming up that we have to start preparing for, such as implementation of standards. They're called Common Core standards. Our whole region is doing this. The whole country is looking at it. That's going to cost a lot more money than was expected when the State Board of Education adopted it. There are big changes. Plus, we're worried about other things also coming up, and Joe is the head of a group that is working on secondary school reform, and that's going to cost a lot of money too.
And what exactly does this money go towards? This is training for teachers or school supplies?
All of the above, probably. In secondary school reform, a lot of it goes for additional staffing that you're going to need for the requirements that were put in. So that's a concern. The money is not there for that. There's no money for that right now. There's also very little money for the new evaluation system that has been approved by the State Board of Education. A lot of training has to take place for people to implement that well, and that money is not there. Another big factor is that a lot of the school systems have been using for the last 2 years, actually the last 3 or 4 years, federal money that is now disappearing. And there is no effort at either at the state level or the local level to make up for that. And in some cases, that's over $1 million. So we're liable to see a lot of school districts, in terms of program-wise, go over the cliff this year. And what we'll be offering children is going to be a lot less next year than it is this year.
That's really scary.
It is.
So I'm assuming you all are spending a lot of time in Hartford lobbying these lawmakers.
Absolutely. We talk about funding for school districts all the time because it is such a big issue. There are other very big issues such as tenure reform, something we're certainly in favor of, as being able to help teachers become more effective and being able to terminate those who are just not doing the job.
I was going to ask you, so there's so many people, some teachers who have maybe just been doing it for a really long time, and there are more qualified teachers to perhaps take their spot. Where does that figure in the tenure system?
Well, the problem now is that if you are a mediocre teacher, you can spend your whole career being mediocre. Now, the percentage of teachers who are mediocre is relatively low.
Good.
But no child should have a mediocre teacher in front of them. And especially when we're going to be facing some layoffs, we should be able to lay off mediocre teachers and ineffective teachers before we have to lay off good teachers. And right now, because seniority plays such a major role in deciding who to lay off, the problem is that in many cases, we are laying off good people and keeping people on board who aren't as good. And we need to address that. And so far in the legislature, that's been a bit of an uphill battle.
Okay, well, we've got to look to the positive, right? There's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel. What can we do as residents and teachers and to help your organization?
Well, make sure they're members of both of our organizations. Generally, they are. But certainly work with us as we try to lobby. Talk to your local legislators. Explain the problems that you're having running your school districts. And that should help what we're doing in Hartford.
And are you getting a lot of good feedback from these educators?
Oh, sure, from board members and from school superintendents and from school principals. We're getting a lot of good support. Our support from the teachers' unions isn't quite as great as we would like it to be, to put it mildly. But I think the general public has a role here, too. And they don't need to get terribly specific about it. All they need to say to their legislators is two things. One, the schools need to be adequately funded. And number two, we should be able to make sure there's an effective teacher in front of every child all the time. If that message gets through, the legislators will represent their constituency. If people are silent, then they don't know what's on people's minds.
No, you can't argue with that. Joe and Bob, thank you so much. We'll send people to the website because it's a very great, informative, helpful website. whatwillourchildrenlose.com. Easy to remember. Long address, but easy to remember.
Right.
So, thank you both.
Thank you.
Best of
Pleasure.
luck this year.
Thank you.
Coming up next on the Education Notebook, from SAT scores to college campus visits, our next guest has you covered. Expert advice from a college counselor is coming up.